Hello, everybody. My name is Amy Boswinkle, and I am so incredibly excited for this opportunity to connect with all of you today, to share my story of experience, strength, and hope of how I was once hopelessly addicted to heroin, alcohol, and benzodiazepines, and what it took for me to become the woman I am today. I am currently a spiritual business coach helping people who have a story of experience, strength, and hope build businesses to impact other people's lives. And where I would like to begin with my story is at the beginning, because we all have a beginning. And the beginning of my life, it really didn't go very well for me. I can remember around 3 years old, that was the first time that I was sexually abused by a family member. And that family member told me to never tell or nobody would ever love me. And that's where I lost my voice. I didn't tell anybody what happened to me until my early 20s. In fact, I was so scared to talk, I couldn't look people in the eye. And when I started elementary school, my elementary school teachers would look at me and ask me questions, and I literally could look back at them and I wouldn't be able to answer them. And that abuse didn't just happen one time, it happened multiple times over multiple years. And when I was in school, it was so bad that my teachers thought that I was a special needs student. And so I got sent to the special needs classroom in first grade. And it was there that I actually discovered, although I didn't know it at the time, I discovered that that was my life purpose, was helping other people, because I thrived in that classroom. It was smaller. There was maybe only 5 or 6 students. There were 2 or 3 teachers, or maybe 1 teacher and 2 or 3 attendants. And I was able to connect to the other kids in that classroom and help them read and do the things that they couldn't do. And I really kind of started to thrive and come out of my shell and be able to talk and feel comfortable. But those teachers realized I didn't belong there, and they sent me back to the regular classroom, where I shut down again. I lost my vitality, I lost my voice, and I was put into the last reading groups and math groups and things like that. And I created this story inside of my head. I didn't get told this, but through behavior and modeling, I do believe, when I look back upon it now with the knowledge that I currently have, is I created this story that I was stupid and I was fat and I was ugly. And I carried that story with me all through elementary and middle school and high school. I would tell myself that other people didn't like me. Although I did have a group of friends, I never felt like I connected. I never felt like I could talk. I didn't feel like I belonged because of this story of feeling and believing that I was stupid, I was fat, and I was ugly. And I ended up graduating from high school. I applied to several different colleges with this story. That I was stupid, fat, and ugly, and I got accepted at every single college that I had applied to. Still couldn't see who I was or what I had. And my parents were all on board for me going away to college, but they really couldn't fund that. So they said that I could go, but I had to find my own way. I have to back up just a little bit here so you guys have some context. I didn't really understand this at the time, but when I was growing up, my mom had an addiction to prescription opiates. It was the kind that was okay because they came from doctors. And so, she would get these prescriptions and she would overtake. And so growing up, I'm not really sure where the money went, but both of my parents had pretty decent jobs. But I can remember my mom hiding the bills under the bed or hiding them in the drawers and telling me, shh, don't tell your dad. So this story was reinforced inside of me of don't talk, don't tell people, what's going on, or other people will not love you. And so my mom exhibited behavior which to me was completely normal, but now when I look back on it, I can see it was a little abnormal, sleeping all day, being up all night, and the utilities wouldn't get paid, and sometimes the utilities would be shut off. There were times where there was no food in the house, and there were times where there was way more than enough food in the house, and we went without, and that's just the way that it was. So that's why I had arrived at a place and going to college where my parents should have, by all practical means, been able to support, me financially, but they couldn't, and it was okay. I wanted to go away. I felt smothered when I was growing up. I felt like my parents had all of these rules, and I didn't feel free inside of myself. I felt like I was always following other people's guidelines, and there was this something inside of me that just wanted to find freedom, and college seemed like that place for me. So I went far enough away that my parents couldn't really have control over me, but it wasn't so far away that I couldn't go home if I wanted to come home and visit. It was about 3.5 hours away, and I became a full-time student. I became a full-time employee, and I became a full-time partier. It was the first time in my life that I met people that I really connected with. They were creatives, they were visionaries, they were artists, they wrote poetry, they created music, and I absolutely loved it. And I had a lot of friends there, but I also got very, very caught up in alcohol and marijuana and pills at that place. And I wore it as a badge of honor. I could drink all night long, maybe get an hour or two of sleep, still be able to get up, go to my classes, turn in my homework. And I'm not saying I did it perfectly all the time, but I did it 98%. I was able to, be able to do that, not miss work very often, due to being hungover or anything like that. So I said I was functional, and functional was okay, and I was okay with that. If people said you're an alcoholic, I'm a functional alcoholic. It was my personal badge of honor. And I was able to carry on that lifestyle and even complete and graduate with my bachelor's degree in psychology. But pretty soon after I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, another downward spiral hit my life, and I started to become suicidal. At this point, I was drinking all the time. When I would get off of work on the weekends, I was swallowing bottles of pills. And I also wore it as a badge of honor that I could outdrink and outtake pills over everybody, but it really started to incapacitate my mental functioning ability, and then in time my emotional and my spiritual functioning ability to the point where I did become suicidal, and I was in and out of psychiatric wards for many years of my life. Towards the end there, I did have a job, and I was living with a roommate, but she became so concerned because of my multiple attempts at suicide that she called my parents, because she just really couldn't take care of me and herself and be able to function and go to work and do the things that she needed to do. So my parents came and picked me up, and I moved back home with them and hit another downward spiral. Once I made it back home, I got DUI after DUI after DUI. Ended up with 3 DUIs. I started using harder drugs. I became a IV heroin addict. I started to hang out with gang members, and I would travel to the projects of Chicago every night just to buy dope and to numb out, because I really didn't know how to deal with what was really going on in my life. I always thought it was something else. I knew I was depressed. I knew that I was really sad all of the time, and I knew that I didn't want to live on this planet any longer. But by the grace of God, God had another plan for me. So every single time I tried to commit suicide, help would arrive. After I got my 3rd DUI, that night, it's a pretty significant night, one major turning point in my life. I had been drinking all night, and I had been using cocaine, although uppers were not really my go-to drug. I was really more of a downer kind of a girl. I was using cocaine, and I can remember going into pharmacies and buying over-the-counter things that would enhance the unreality of life, so to speak. And I was driving and I hit a telephone pole. I had been driving all night long. Don't even remember where I went or who I was talking to or if I went to people's houses or anything like that. I just remember waking up. I had hit head on a telephone pole, and it was morning time at this point, and the airbags had deployed. And there were all these people standing around the car. And I was really scared because I knew that that was my third DUI, and I knew that that third DUI held a penalty of the probability of spending a year in jail. And I couldn't go to jail for whatever reason. That was really, really scary to me. I didn't want to do that. So I come to, and I have a little bit of blood coming down my nose, and I'm really kind of out of it. And I go and I get out of the car, and all these people are like, "Are you okay? What's going on? The police are on their way. Just wait here. You're going to be okay." And I wanted to run, but there were so many people, and they were creating a wall that I couldn't run because I wanted to run away and hide because I knew that they were going to take me to jail, and I was so afraid, even though I was really out of my mind at this point. And I run back into my car, and I lock the door so they can't get to me, and they're like, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And the policeman gets there, and I get handcuffed. I have the handcuffs behind me. I get put in the back of the policeman's vehicle, and it's summertime. And he has the window down about 3/4 in the back seat where I'm at. And I'm really flexible, and even though I've been making horrible choices in my life, the weird thing is that I had a lot of motivation inside of me, and I could connect to health. And so I had yoga practice on and on throughout my life, and exercise and eating properly when I remember to do that. But because of yoga, I'm really flexible, and I'm able to shimmy the handcuffs behind me below my feet and pull them in front of me. And I get myself up as we're driving down the street. I get myself up on the window of the policeman's car, and I think, I gotta do this. I gotta die. I can't go to jail. And so I roll myself backwards outside of the policeman's car as he's driving down the road, and I'm somersaulting backwards down the road, and I freak him out, and I don't die. And he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" So scared and so angry all at the same time, understandably so. And I'm like, I'm trying to die. I can't live here on this planet. And he sees the pain in my face. He takes me to the police station, calls an ambulance. I go to the psychiatric ward again. And I know something has to change. And up until that point, I had tried a lot of things because I had been in so much trouble. I had tried inpatient and outpatient treatment centers, the 90 meetings in 90 days. I had gotten a sponsor. I worked the steps. I did everything everybody told me would work. I got a therapist. I was put on a bunch of different prescription medications. I was labeled as borderline personality disorder, psychotic, major depression, and a major anxiety disorder, put on all kinds of different medications for those things. And I tried. It wasn't like I didn't try. I did try, and for short bursts of time, AA would work, therapy would seem to work, but this presence inside of me would always take over. This sadness would always take over. And as I'm in that psychiatric ward that last time, I know I have to find another way, and there's this fire inside of me starting to brew. And even though I didn't know what it was, I knew I could find the way. There was always something inside of me that knew that I could find the way if I put my mind to it, if I just made a decision and I stood strongly in it. A decision to go to any length to have what I want, rather than just like the idea of it, right? Making that commitment to going to any length. And my parents, out of the kindness of their heart, allowed me back into their home because at this point, I had made so many poor choices. Friends turned their back on me. Family members turned their back on me. I was making such poor choices. I lost my car. It was totaled in that crash. I lost my job because of that. I had nothing. I had no one. So I go back and I live with my parents as I'm waiting to go to court and see what my sentence is going to be. And they are not willing to drive me anywhere. I have no car. And 3 blocks from their house is a health food store. I go there, I apply at this health food store, and I get the job. Changed my life. I studied the human body nonstop. Biology, chemistry, physiology, anatomy, medical intuition, energy healing, alternative healing, everything you can imagine. And I started to understand for the first time ever what was going on inside of me. How taking in too many sugar and carbs created candida in the body, and candida is a type of fungus that lives off of sugar. And that candida can cause not only sugar cravings, but alcohol cravings. And that turns on inflammation markers in the body. And when the inflammation markers get turned on in the body, then it turns on the inflammation markers in the DNA, which whatever your family history is connected to it, you can accelerate disease at that state, which creates digestive distress, which creates adrenal fatigue. And it creates this vicious cycle. And I started to understand addictions at this really deep level, that it really wasn't always, it wasn't about, right, alcoholism or drug addiction, that addictions really can be connected to food and pornography and gambling and all sorts of things. And my mind is blown because I had created this 5-step approach to health. And I really felt in my heart that if people just knew this formula, the trajectory of their life could be changed. Now, I figured out the physical health piece, right? And my body started to heal as I started to detoxify my body, and what really scared me is I had damaged my liver so badly that a doctor looked me in the eye and said, "You're gonna die. You're gonna die." And I didn't say this out loud, but I thought in my head, I said, "No, I'm not. I'm not going to die. I'm going to figure this out." And I did. And I worked at that health food store for 12 and a half years. I learned a lot about the human body. I learned a lot about people. I can remember starting at that job and looking around in this health food store, and there's thousands of products for thousands of different ailments. And I'm not against conventional medicine. I think it's a really powerful tool, but I also come to realize that there's this place where we can bridge the gap and allow 2 worlds to collide and create greater health consciousness, which will allow people to understand themselves at a completely different level, right? And I started working with people, and it took a long time for me to learn the products and learn people and learn how to talk because of that story, that I was stupid. And I was fat, and I was ugly, and I couldn't look people in the eye. But I had a job where I was in sales. I had to learn to connect with people. And I couldn't really look them in the eye, and sometimes I would. But I learned the product, and I learned people. I really do care about people a lot. I always have. It was myself I didn't love. And I didn't really understand that for a long time either, but I understand that now, and I'll get to that in just a second, guys, okay? So I'm going along, and I don't tell people my story. 12 and a half years I worked in that health food store, and I was so ashamed of the choices that I had made. There was so much shame, and there was so much guilt for who I was that I still carried this burden of emotional pain inside of my heart. And although when I quit using heroin, I never used heroin again, I would arrive at different points in my life while working at that health food store where I would go on little benders here and there with alcohol and benzodiazepines if I could get my hands on them, because all this emotional pain would build up inside of me. And I would feel all of this pressure inside of my heart. And as all of this emotional turmoil was going on in my life, I really felt like at that moment in time, I didn't know what to do. I understood what to do physically, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual side was still a mystery to me. And I kept trying, and I kept trying, and I kept trying, and the guilt when I would revert back, because life just felt so hard. And I would use, and I would wake up, and I'd feel so bad. And I remember praying, God, please help me figure this out. I don't want to be this person, because it would take me right back mentally and emotionally to these painful places of hating myself and not wanting to live. And I wanted to figure it out. I wanted to connect to people. I wanted to feel free in life. I wanted to break free from the prison of my own mind. And towards the end of my experience at that health food store, the internet got introduced, and people started to buy more supplements and things online. And I worked in a store where the owner was very gracious and very kind, and she made sure we were very educated. In fact, we were so educated, people would come in, and I got to the point where I knew products so well, and I knew people so well, even though I couldn't really look them in the eye. I could feel their heart. I could tell where they wanted to go, and some people were willing to go to any length to have what they wanted. They made that decision, and some people just liked the idea of what they wanted. And you learn to navigate that space. You really learn to read the energy of people and learn what they were willing to do and what they weren't willing to do. People called me Dr. Amy, even though I'm not really a doctor, right? They would come in because I could explain things very well in such a way and help them make connections of, like, when you do this, this is what's occurring inside of your body. But people like, knowledge is great, but people also like to find ways to save their money, and I understand that completely. So when the dawn of the internet came and more people started to buy supplements and vitamins and things online, well, revenue started to go down a little bit in the store, and the owner started to express to us, well, if this trend continues to happen, I don't know if I'm going to be able to give everybody the amount of hours that I've been giving them, or maybe some people might even have to be cut from the team. And that really made me nervous, because I was making just enough money at that point to be able to survive. Now, while I was working at that health food store, I did try to become a naturopathic doctor. I did apply at a school. I was going to school. I went to China while I was going to that school, and I studied traditional Chinese medicine, traditional Tibetan medicine for short periods of time with this naturopathic school. But that naturopathic school went bankrupt before I got my degree, so I am not a naturopathic doctor, but I learned a lot from that experience, and I put a lot of mind, body, and soul into that schooling. And when my owner of the health food store started to express that to me, I was like, I'm going to need to get some kind of education. I liked what I was doing. I liked the work. I connected very well to it. But I didn't have it in me to go to school for another 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, put that much commitment into it. And so I looked online. I'm about 40 years old at this point. And I don't have a TV. I don't watch TV. I don't really know how to use the internet. I do have an email account. I don't know how to send attachments in an email. I don't know much about cyberspace. I was very much a live off the land kind of girl, but I had to learn to navigate those spaces. And I go online and I find this thing called a health coaching school. You get your certificate in as little as 6 to 12 months. And I'm like, yes, I can do that. I have 6 months. I'm going to do it in 6 months. I know me. I'm committed. I'm motivated. I have a lot of experience and knowledge behind me. And boy, did I learn how little I really knew, because that schooling gave me the missing links to the emotional, mental, and spiritual peace that I had been looking for. And my entire world changed. Even though so much of my life had changed, so much of my life changed in those 6 months. I became a completely different person overnight when that school told me this one simple sentence: your story is your most powerful tool. And I had to sit with that because I thought, my story is my most powerful tool? It's what connects me to other people? Where I lived in a society that told me the person that I was not good. Where I lived in a society that told me because of my criminal record I was never going to have a good job or make anything of myself. Where I lived in a world where they did background checks, and when people looked at me, they had a different idea about me. And I thought, oh, I have a story. And in 12 and a half years, only 2 or 3 people had ever knew anything about me. There were about 30 employees. And I started to work through a lot of fear. I started to look people in the eye. I started to share my story. I started to publicly speak. And it was so scary. To this day, this is 4 years later, it's still scary. But I do it because it's part of my purpose. Because I really do care about people a lot. And I want to let them know that no matter where you are, where you've been, or what society tells you, or if your family's turned their back on you, or you think you're stupid, or you're fat, or you're ugly, or that nobody loves you, or you hate yourself, that you can find a way to love yourself. And so I worked through every fear. I practiced looking people in the eye. I practiced sharing my story. I did it over and over and over again. I became my own business owner. What I used to make in a year, I can now, what would take me 5 years, make in 1 year by living my passion, breaking free from societal norms, sharing my story of experience, strength, and hope, teaching other people to break free from the prison of their own minds, and helping them heal their heart. Because our hearts, they harbor repressed emotion. And when we don't feel like we're good enough, all of that emotion gets stored here. And we start to believe we are one person. But what I've learned is this, that we can change the way that we think by telling ourselves new thoughts. And that when we tell ourselves those new thoughts enough, our feelings start to match up. And when those thoughts and those feelings start to match up because we've created a new behavior, we behave differently. Because what I've learned along the way is that we can learn things, we can read things, we can watch TV, we can watch documentaries, we can watch all sorts of things, but knowledge does not equal behavior change. But if we just change our behavior by telling ourselves a new story, and in the beginning it might feel really hard. And in the beginning, our mind might not be able to connect that new feeling. We might still feel numb. In fact, if we hold on to things for a really long time and our heart is really numb and we don't feel connected to people, we don't feel connected to ourselves, we don't feel connected to our higher power, we're still stuck. And that's not what this experience on life is supposed to be all about. It's supposed to be about freedom. It's supposed to be about connection. It's supposed to be about loving ourselves so fully that we can go out and live our purpose. And as we're expressing our purpose with other people, turning their light on too. Because this consciousness, my belief, that this consciousness that we're all in with everything that is going on in the world is the greatest precipice to us connecting with one another than we have ever had on this planet. And we can choose to make that choice to connect and share our stories. Because our stories, they heal one another. They create connection. And so I will never, ever stop telling people my story. I will continue every day to wake up and tell myself new stories. And that doesn't mean I forget the old ones. Instead of seeing them as painful, what I see them as are lessons. And every lesson brought me closer to all of you. And that's what makes it worth it to me. You are worthy of everything your heart desires. And I know what it's like to feel so stuck and so lost that you don't even want to live here anymore. But there's a place for you. You're here for a reason. And you are important. And you are loved so much by me and your higher power and other people. Even if it feels like nobody loves you, you are loved. You are thought of every day, because I connect to you in my heart every single day. And your higher power loves you so much. And the only way I can tell my new self new stories is by creating a new behavior, right? I can't continue to tell myself the old thoughts of stupid, fat, and ugly. I have to say, I'm amazing and I am worthy and that God loves me so much that I get to share this story of experience, strength, and hope with others, because my voice matters just as much as yours. Just as much as yours. And if I continue doing this, I can shatter illusions, not only for myself, but those who feel connected to me. And as I do that, as I continue to create a new behavior, and I shift my thoughts, and I create a new feeling, and I become a new identity. I'm no longer the identity of a person who's living in pain and sorrow and depression. I live in the identity of this person who is love and caring and empathetic. And it boiled down to this. I had to make a decision. And it's this simple. We get to choose one of two paths. We're either going to decide we're going to go to any length to have what it is we want, no matter what loads up, no matter what other people tell us, no matter what is going on in the background, no matter what other people think of us, or we just like the idea of what we want and we're actually not really willing to commit to it right now. And that's okay too. Just see yourself with crystal clarity, because clarity is a very powerful mirror, my friends. And when you can see yourself with crystal clarity, nothing will ever hold you back. I want to thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart for sharing this experience with me. If you made it here all the way to the end, I want to let you know you matter. I speak this from my heart because you do matter. And there is a person on this planet who loves you so much and thinks about you all the time, because I do. And if you feel lost in your journey, please feel free. You can reach out to me anytime. I'm on social media, on Facebook, Amy Boswinkle, AMIEEBOSWINKLE. You can also find me on my website, www.connectionsrestored.com, or on Instagram at Amy Boswinkle. Thank you so much for your time. I love you.